Karim Al-Fade stood motionless before the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, staring down at the city that glittered like a treasure chest he no longer wanted to open. His reflection stared back, a man in his early 40s, sharp suit, hollow eyes, a fortune so vast it felt like a curse. He picked up the solid gold paperweight from his desk, weighing it in his palm, then set it down with a soft thud. The numbers on his portfolio screen glowed green, up another 3% today. He closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. A notification chimed from his tablet. He turned, frowning, and picked it up. A single message appeared on the screen. You have been selected for the reversal system. Complete the mission and your wealth will decrease by 10%. Fail and it will increase by 15%. Karim's breath caught. He read the message again, his finger trembling slightly over the screen. The corner of his mouth twitched upward, not a smile but the beginning of hope. He accepted the terms without hesitation. A new notification appeared. Mission 1, give away your most valuable possession to a stranger within the hour. Karim glanced around the penthouse, his eyes landing on a vintage watch, his father's last gift, sitting on the nightstand. He grabbed the watch, his grip tightening around the leather band, then paused. His reflection in the window stared back, uncertain, as the memory of his father's voice echoed faintly in his mind. Karim stepped into the elevator and descended to the lobby. The doors opened onto polished marble floors and a quiet front desk clerk who barely glanced up from his screen. He walked past the clerk, out through the revolving glass doors and onto the bustling evening street. Pedestrians hurried past, their faces lit by shop windows and passing headlights. A young woman with a worn backpack sat on a bench near the entrance, reading a tattered novel under a flickering street lamp. Karim approached her slowly, the watch hidden in his clenched fist. He stopped in front of her. She looked up, startled, her eyes scanning his expensive suit with guarded suspicion. Karim opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. He extended his hand, offering the watch. The woman stared at it, then back at his face. "What is this?" she asked, her voice sharp with confusion. Karim shook his head, unable to explain, and simply pressed the watch into her palm. She recoiled, dropping the watch onto the bench as if it burned her. "I don't want your charity," she said, standing abruptly. She grabbed her backpack and walked away without looking back. Karim stood alone by the bench, the watch lying untouched on the wooden slats. He picked it up, dusted it off, and felt a knot tighten in his chest. His tablet buzzed in his jacket pocket. He pulled it out and read the screen. Mission failed. Wealth increased by 15%. Karim's jaw tightened as he stared at the words, the street noise fading around him. He returned to his penthouse and sank into his leather armchair, the watch still in his hand. He tossed it onto the desk, where it landed beside the gold paperweight, both symbols of everything he couldn't escape. The tablet chimed again. New mission. Spend your entire day doing manual labor for minimum wage. Complete the mission to lose 5% of your wealth. Fail to gain 10%. Karim laughed bitterly. He changed into old jeans and a plain shirt, leaving his tailored suit hanging in the closet. He took the service elevator down to the basement garage and climbed into his oldest car, a dusty sedan he hadn't touched in years. He drove to a construction site on the outskirts of the city. Men in hard hats moved between scaffolding and steel beams under the harsh afternoon sun. He stepped out, approached the foreman, and asked for work. The foreman, a stocky man with a graying beard, squinted at him. "You're joking," he said, looking at Karim's soft hands and clean shoes. Karim shook his head. The foreman shrugged and handed him a shovel. Karim dug into the gravel for hours, his palms blistering, sweat soaking through his shirt. His back ached, his shoulders burned, but he kept swinging the shovel, each strike a small prayer for failure. As the sun began to set, the foreman walked over and clapped him on the shoulder. "Kid, you work harder than half my crew. You're hired permanently if you want." Karim's face fell. He had succeeded. He drove home in silence, his hands raw and trembling against the steering wheel. The tablet buzzed before he even parked. Mission successful. Wealth decreased by 5%. Karim slammed his palm against the dashboard, the horn blaring briefly into the empty garage. In his penthouse, he tore off his dirty shirt and stood in front of the mirror, staring at his reflection. His muscles ached, his palms were bleeding, and yet the numbers on his portfolio had barely budged. He punched the wall, leaving a small dent in the pristine plaster. He sat on the edge of his bed, his head in his hands. The tablet chimed one more time. Final mission, lose a game of chess to a child. Failure equals 25% increase. Success equals 25% decrease. Karim's eyes widened. He dressed quickly, simple clothes, no watch, no jewelry, and drove to the public park at the city center. Under a canopy of fairy lights, a young boy sat at a stone chess table, his legs swinging as he waited for an opponent. Karim sat across from the boy, who introduced himself as Samir, age 10. Samir set up the board with practiced precision. Karim made his first move, a weak pawn push, intentionally reckless. Samir responded with a rapid advance, capturing Karim's knight within 3 moves. Karim felt a flicker of relief. He made another poor move, leaving his queen exposed. Samir paused, his brow furrowed. He studied Karim's face, then the board, then moved his bishop to block an obvious trap. "You're letting me win," Samir said flatly. Karim's heart dropped. He returned to his penthouse and collapsed onto the floor, his back against the cold glass of the window. The city lights blurred as tears welled in his eyes. His fortune had grown larger than ever, and he felt emptier than before. A soft knock came at the penthouse door. Karim didn't move. The knock came again, more insistent. He dragged himself to his feet and opened the door. A young woman stood in the hallway, the same woman from the bench. She held his father's watch in her hands. "I think you dropped this," she said quietly, pressing it into his palm. Karim stared at the watch, then at her, his throat tight. She turned and walked away down the corridor. Karim looked at the watch in his hand, then at the tablet on the floor. A new message glowed on the screen. "Wealth cannot be lost, but maybe it can be shared." Karim stood in the doorway of his penthouse, the watch in one hand, the tablet in the other. The hallway stretched. Karim walked down the hallway, the watch clutched in his hand, the tablet still glowing with that cryptic message about sharing. He stopped mid-stride, turned around, and walked back toward his penthouse door, then stopped again, pivoting on his heel like a confused compass needle. He threw his arms wide and shouted at the empty corridor, "Fine, I'll give it all away." A cleaning lady emerged from a side door, stared at him for a long second, then slowly backed away, pushing her cart in reverse. Karim marched to the elevator, pressed the button for the ground floor, and when the doors opened, he stepped inside, but the elevator didn't move. He pressed the button again. Nothing. He pressed it repeatedly, his finger jabbing the panel like a woodpecker, his eye twitching. The door slid shut and the elevator descended. Karim leaned against the wall, breathing heavily, sweat beading on his forehead. A cheerful elevator music played, some upbeat jazz that made him clench his fists. He burst through the lobby and spotted a homeless man sitting near the entrance. Karim ran toward him, pulled out his wallet, and thrust a thick stack of cash into the man's hands. The man looked at the money, looked at Karim, then screamed and ran away. Karim stood frozen, his arms still extended, the money fluttering to the ground. A gust of wind scattered the bills across the sidewalk. He scrambled to pick them up, but a flock of pigeons descended and pecked at the notes as if they were breadcrumbs. He shooed the pigeons away, gathered the crumpled bills, and shoved them back into his wallet. His face was a mask of pure exasperation, eyebrows angled down, lips pressed so thin they disappeared. He spotted a street vendor selling cheap plastic toys. Karim walked over and declared, "I'll buy your entire inventory, $10,000. The vendor's eyes went wide with joy. Karim handed over the cash, grabbed a box of flimsy spinning tops, and smiled. 10 minutes later, a viral video of a billionaire buying out a toy vendor surfaced online. The toys sold out in minutes as collectors swarmed, and Karim's phone buzzed with a notification. "Your investment in viral collectibles has increased your wealth by 8%. Karim stared at the screen, his jaw unhinging so slowly it looked animated. He blinked 3 times, then let out a sound, a strangled mixture of a groan and a laugh that made a passing dog tilt its head in confusion. He threw his hands in the air, the tablet clattering to the ground. "This is impossible," he yelled at the sky. A passerby recorded him on their phone, captioning it, "Rich man having a meltdown, relatable." Determined, Karim hailed a taxi and directed the driver to the worst, most failing restaurant in the city. He walked in, saw the empty tables, the flickering lights, and grinned. He ordered every dish on the menu, 100 plates, and paid up front in cash. The chef, a frail old man with tears in his eyes, prepared the food with such passion and love that a food critic happened to walk in, tasted a single bite, and wrote a glowing 5-star review that went viral within the hour. Karim sat at a table surrounded by mountains of food, his fork halfway to his mouth, his face frozen in a grotesque grimace of disbelief. The restaurant owner ran over and kissed his hands, thanking him for saving our legacy. His tablet buzzed, "Congratulations, your strategic investment in a rising culinary hotspot has increased your wealth by 12%. Karim slowly lowered his fork, laid his forehead on the greasy tablecloth, and let out a long, muffled scream. He stumbled out of the restaurant, his tie now undone, his shirt untucked, his hair a disheveled mess. He looked like a man who had survived a hurricane or caused one. A child pointed at him and whispered to his mother, "Is that a zombie?" Karim marched to a casino. He found the roulette table and placed his entire remaining liquid wealth, millions, on a single number, 13. The wheel spun. His eyes were wide, a manic grin spread across his face. This had to fail. The ball bounced, hopped, skipped over 12, and landed with a click on 13. Karim's grin froze, then inverted into a cartoonish frown. The dealer slid a mountain of chips toward him. Karim pushed them back. "No, keep them." The dealer called security. 2 guards escorted him out, but not before returning his chips in a velvet pouch. "For your safety, sir." Karim stood outside the casino, holding the pouch, his left eye twitching uncontrollably while his right eye remained perfectly still. He opened the pouch, poured the chips into a fountain, and watched them sink. A maintenance worker fished them out, cashed them in, and donated the money to a children's hospital in Karim's name, and the hospital sent him a thank you plaque and a tax deduction certificate. Karim sat on the edge of the fountain, the plaque in his lap, and began to laugh, a high-pitched, unhinged cackle that bounced off the casino walls. Passers-by gave him a wide berth. He laughed until he choked, then coughed, then laughed again. He wiped a tear from his eye and pulled out his tablet. "New message, mission, destroy your phone." Karim's face lit up with genuine hope. He pulled out his expensive smartphone, raised it high above his head, and slammed it onto the concrete. The phone bounced once, twice, and landed face up, cracked but functioning. A notification appeared. "Your phone's insurance policy covered the damage. You saved 90% on replacement costs. Wealth increased by 2%. Karim stared at the cracked screen, his eye twitching again. He picked up the phone, held it to his ear, and whispered, "Are you mocking me?" The phone buzzed in response, a calendar reminder for his quarterly tax payment. Karim walked to the city's grandest hotel, demanded the presidential suite for a month, and paid with his watch, his father's watch. The receptionist frowned, scanned the watch, and gasped. Sir, this is a one-of-a-kind vintage piece worth 3 times the suite's cost. We cannot accept this, but we can give you a complimentary upgrade and return the watch. He stood in the lobby, holding the watch again, his expression cycling through shock, fury, despair, and finally landing on a grimace so exaggerated his cheeks trembled. He looked like a man who had just bitten into a lemon wrapped in a chili pepper. He stormed out, walked to a park, and found a group of teenagers playing basketball. He offered them $1 million to let him lose a game. The teenagers exchanged glances, then one said, "Okay, old man, but we play for real." Karim grinned perfect. Karim tripped over his own feet during the tip-off, landed face first on the asphalt, and somehow the basketball bounced off his head and into the hoop. The teenagers cheered. "Sick trick shot, mister." Karim lay on the ground, groaning, a puff of dust rising around his face. He stood up, dusted off his now-torn shirt, and tried to intentionally miss a free throw. He tossed the ball gently toward the hoop. It hit the rim, spun 5 times, and fell in. His face contorted into a painful, forced smile as he gave a thumbs up to the cheering kids. He grabbed his tablet. "You have successfully entertained the youth. Local news picked up your charity game. Wealth increased by 5%. Karim clutched his chest, staggered backward, and slumped onto a park bench, his head lolling back like a ragdoll. He lay there staring at the sky when the young woman from before, the one with the watch, appeared beside him. She sat down and handed him a bottle of water. "You look like you need this," she said, her voice soft. Karim took it, chugged it, and spilled half down his shirt. She looked at his disheveled state, the cracked phone, the dusty clothes, and asked, "Are you trying to lose money?" Karim's eyes shot open. He nodded frantically, sputtering water. She tilted her head, then burst out laughing. "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." Karim stared at her, then a slow, genuine smile crept across his face. Not a smirk, not a grimace, but a real, tired, human smile. He let out a chuckle, then a full laugh, and for the first time he wasn't trying to lose anything. His tablet buzzed one final time. He looked at the screen. "System override. Since you've achieved maximum emotional wealth, your financial wealth has been frozen. No further increases, no further decreases. Congratulations." Karim read it, blinked, and snorted. He turned to the young woman, handed her the watch again, and said, "Keep it, please. I don't care what happens anymore." She took it, smiled, and said, "Fine, but only if you buy me ice cream." Karim laughed, stood up, and walked with her toward a vendor, his wallet still heavy but his heart suddenly lighter, empty before him. He took a slow step forward, then another, walking away from the open door behind him. Karim and Layla reached the ice cream cart, its colorful umbrella fluttering in the evening breeze. Karim pulled out his wallet with dramatic flair, ready to overpay by several $1,000s. The elderly vendor smiled warmly and waved his hand dismissively. "For Layla, it's always free. She saved my cat from a tree last week." Karim's jaw unhinged, his arm still frozen mid-reach. Karim tried to shove a $100 bill into the vendor's apron pocket, but the vendor jumped back as if avoiding a snake. "No tips, it's against my religion and my wife's rules," he shouted, pointing a wooden spoon at Karim. Karim stumbled forward, the bill fluttering from his fingers, carried by a sudden gust of wind directly into a donation jar taped to the cart's side, labeled Animal Shelter Fund. A tiny bell rang as the bill landed perfectly inside. Karim stared at the jar, his face cycling through disbelief, then defeat, then comical despair. Layla licked her strawberry cone, one eyebrow raised, a smirk playing on her lips as she watched him. Determined to waste money, Karim marched into an expensive boutique, his eyes scanning for the most hideous item. He spotted a garish golden jacket covered in sequins and faux fur epaulettes and grabbed it victoriously. He slapped his black credit card onto the glass counter with a triumphant thud. The cashier, a young man with bright purple hair, scanned it, frowned at the screen, then looked up. "Sir, this jacket is 90% off today. Final clearance." Karim's left eye twitched violently. He bought all 10 remaining jackets. The cashier beamed, "Buy 10, get 20 more free from the back." Karim clutched his chest as the cashier disappeared into the stockroom. Karim walked out of the boutique wearing one ugly gold jacket over his t-shirt, carrying a shopping bag bursting with more, looking like a human disco ball. Layla leaned against a lamppost, doubled over, tears streaming from her laughter. A street photographer crouching nearby snapped a rapid burst of photos. Within minutes, the image of the Golden King spread across social media, and Karim's phone buzzed with a licensing offer for $50,000. Karim grabbed his cracked phone, screamed "no" into the receiver, and hung up. He threw the phone into his shopping bag and stormed off, the golden sequins clinking with every furious step. He found a shady young man selling single dried beans from a velvet cloth on a street corner. Karim shoved $5,000 into the man's hand and grabbed a single shriveled bean. The shady young man looked at the thick stack of cash, then at Karim's frantic, desperate eyes. He sighed deeply, patted Karim's shoulder, and said, "Bro, I can't do this to you. You clearly need a therapist more than you need this bean." He gave the money back. Karim grabbed the young man's shoulders, shaking him gently. "Please, take the money, take it all." The young man's eyes went wide with terror and he sprinted away, leaving his velvet cloth behind. Karim fell to his knees on the sidewalk, the single shriveled bean clutched in his palm, his face a masterpiece of pure agony, eyes squeezed shut, mouth open in a silent scream, golden sequins glinting around him. Layla walked over, helped him up by the elbow, and brushed dust off his ridiculous jacket. You're completely insane, she said, but a wide, warm smile spread across her face as she spoke. He slumped onto a nearby bench, his head in his hands, the cheap sequins scratching his forehead. I just want to be ordinary, he mumbled through his fingers. Layla sat beside him, her voice soft and steady. Maybe ordinary isn't about the number in your bank account. Maybe it's about what you actually do with your time. He slowly lifted his head, looking at her face as if seeing her clearly for the first time. He didn't interrupt, didn't argue, he just listened, his shoulders relaxing slightly. His tablet, which had miraculously survived the journey, buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. New objective, make a genuine friend. Karim blinked at the screen. He turned to Layla, his voice uncertain, almost childlike. Are we friends? She looked at him, tilted her head, and gave a soft, simple nod. Karim let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. The tablet dinged softly. Objective complete. Financial wealth unchanged. Emotional stability plus 100%. Karim stared at the screen, then let out a genuine, unforced chuckle. He tossed the tablet onto the grass beside the bench, watching it spin once before landing face up. He didn't pick it up. He didn't want to. A stray brown mutt wandered over, sniffed the tablet curiously, then lifted its hind leg and urinated directly onto the screen, which flickered and died. Karim stared at the dog, then at the dead tablet, then threw his head back and laughed, a deep, wheezing, uncontrollable laugh that made Layla jump. He laughed until he choked on air. The dog wagged its tail proudly and sat down beside Karim, panting happily. Karim wheezed, even the dog hates that thing. He patted the mutt's head, still giggling. He stood up, leaving the dead, urine-soaked tablet in the grass. He stretched his arms wide and declared, I'm done trying to lose money. I'm done trying, period. He and Layla walked slowly through the city, the evening settling into a cool night. They passed an alley where a homeless elderly woman shivered under a thin cardboard sheet. Karim stopped. Without a second thought, he peeled off the ugly golden jacket and draped it gently over her thin shoulders. She looked up, her wrinkled face cracking into a weary, grateful smile. A man with a small news camera, filming a nearby street festival, turned his lens and caught the act from a distance, his microphone picking up the soft exchange. The news crew approached, but Karim held up his hands and ducked his face, turning away. The final broadcast showed only his back, the golden jacket shimmering, not his face. He sighed in profound relief. Layla grinned at him. You just did something good and no one knows it's you. Karim allowed himself a small, proud smile. Finally, he whispered, something went unnoticed. Karim looked down at the limp daisy in his palm, his eyes softening, the corners of his mouth turning upward. He crouched down, thanked the child, and tucked the flower carefully into his shirt pocket. Layla pointed across the street at a dusty, dimly lit bookstore with a closing DOWN sign taped to the window. That place has been here for 40 years, she said, her voice tinged with sadness. Karim crossed the street, pushed open the creaky door, and browsed the shelves for several minutes. He picked one thin, worn poetry book, walked to the counter, and placed down the exact price printed on the back cover. The elderly owner, frail and white-haired, squinted at the coins, then at Karim. Sir, he called as Karim reached the door, you forgot your change, there was a discount today. Karim turned back, his face calm and open. He gently pushed the coins toward the old man. Keep it, he said softly, for the story you'll tell tomorrow. The owner blinked, confused but deeply moved. Karim stepped out of the bookstore, the poetry book tucked under his arm, and joined Layla on the sidewalk. They walked side by side into the orange and purple twilight, his wallet still heavy, his pockets still full, but the weight in his chest was gone entirely. Karim and Layla walked in comfortable silence, the poetry book pressed against his chest. The twilight deepened into night and streetlights flickered on one by one, casting long golden pools on the pavement. They passed a shuttered community center, its windows dark, a faded sign reading Youth Art Program closed due to funding. Karim stopped, his eyes tracing the peeling letters. He peered through the grimy window at the empty room inside, easels stacked in corners, dried paint pots on shelves, half-finished canvases gathering dust. Something stirred in his chest. I want to fund this, he said quietly, almost to himself. Layla looked at him, eyebrows raised. You sure that might actually lose you money? Karim let out a short, surprised laugh. Exactly, but also, I kind of want to see the paintings. He smiled, and for the first time, his desire to lose money and his desire to do good aligned. He found the community center's contact number on the door, called it on his cracked phone, and within 10 minutes, a frantic, tearful program director arrived, keys jangling in her trembling hands. Karim wrote a check for an amount that made the director's eyes bulge. She hugged him so tightly he coughed, and he awkwardly patted her back, his face reddening. As she unlocked the doors and flicked on the lights, Karim stepped inside. The dusty room glowed with warm fluorescent light, revealing hundreds of children's paintings taped to the walls, crude, colorful, joyful. He walked along the walls, studying each drawing, a purple cat, a spaceship with polka dots, a family of stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. His throat tightened. Layla joined him, pointing at a messy watercolor of a blazing sun. That one's mine, she said, grinning. I was 8. Karim turned to her, surprised, then laughed warmly. The program director, still sniffling, showed them a storage room filled with art supplies, dried-out markers, broken crayons, crumpled paper. We couldn't afford new stuff, she whispered. Karim pulled out his wallet, but instead of throwing cash, he asked, where's the nearest art supply store? The director pointed down the street. Let's go shopping, he said, his voice light and purposeful. They walked to a small art store, its windows glowing with colorful displays. Karim picked up a basket and began filling it with paints, brushes, canvases, and pastels, carefully, deliberately, not in a frenzy. At the checkout, he placed each item on the counter with calm precision. The total came to a modest sum, not millions, not even thousands. He paid with exact change and a few bills. The cashier, a young woman with paint-stained fingers, thanked him with genuine warmth. Karim smiled back, his face relaxed, and carried the heavy bags back to the community center. Inside, he helped the director organize the supplies on the dusty shelves, stacking paper, arranging brushes by size, lining up paint tubes like soldiers. His hands got dirty with old pigment dust. Layla picked up a brush, dipped it in water, and painted a quick, imperfect daisy on a scrap of paper. She held it up. Reminds me of that flower the kid gave you. Karim touched his pocket where the wilted daisy still rested. He pulled out the shriveled flower, now brown and crinkled, and looked at it with gentle reverence. He didn't throw it away, he tucked it back carefully. The boy frowned. That stupid rich people buy stuff. Karim laughed, crouching down. What would you buy? The boy thought for a moment. A giant trampoline and a pet dinosaur. Karim's face lit up with genuine delight. He turned to Layla, who was already snorting with laughter. I'm going to buy that kid a trampoline, he said. She rolled her eyes but smiled. The program director approached, her eyes still wet. Mr. Al-Fayed, I don't know how to thank you. Karim held up a hand. Just keep the art program going, that's thanks enough. He and Layla slipped away from the commotion, walking down a quiet side street. The night air was cool, and the sounds of laughter faded behind them. A man in a ragged coat approached, holding a small cardboard sign, "Need a meal, anything helps." Karim reached into his pocket and pulled out a bill, but instead of a large one he pulled out a 20. They walked on until they reached a small, humble mosque, its minaret glowing softly against the dark sky. The call to prayer echoed gently in the distance. Karim stopped, his eyes fixed on the arched doorway. He hadn't prayed in years, not sincerely, not from the heart. He felt a pull he couldn't name. He removed his shoes at the entrance and stepped inside onto the cool, patterned carpet. Layla waited outside, leaning against a wall. The prayer hall was quiet, lit by soft pendant lights. Karim found a spot near the back, knelt on the carpet, and placed his forehead to the ground. He didn't recite formal prayers. He just stayed there, breathing, letting the silence wash over him. After several long minutes, he rose, his knees stiff, his eyes slightly red. He walked out to Layla, who gave him a knowing, tender look without asking any questions. They found a small park bench near a pond, its surface reflecting the moon and scattered stars. They sat in silence, watching the ripples. Karim pulled out his wallet for what felt like the 100th time. He opened it, looked at the thick stack of cards and cash, and then closed it without taking anything out. It's just paper, he murmured. Layla leaned her head on his shoulder. He didn't flinch or pull away. He let her stay, his arms slowly coming to rest around her back, a quiet comfort passing between them. A stray cat padded over, sniffed Karim's shoe, and curled up against his foot. He looked down, his face softening into a boyish grin. I'm a cat person now, apparently. He reached down and gently scratched the cat behind its ears. It purred loudly, rubbing its head against his ankle. Layla murmured, "You've been adopted." Karim chuckled, his voice low and warm. The three of them stayed there, Karim, Layla, and the purring cat, under the vast, glittering sky, his pockets still full, his bank account still absurd, but his heart so light it could have floated away on the night breeze. Karim woke up the next morning on Layla's couch, his back aching, the gray cat curled on his chest. He blinked at the unfamiliar ceiling and let out a groan, not from pain, but from the sheer absurdity of his situation. He sat up slowly, careful not to disturb the cat, and looked around Layla's small apartment. Books stacked on every surface, half-finished paintings leaning against walls, a single potted plant struggling for life on the windowsill. He reached for his phone, checked his bank balance out of habit, and winced. It had grown again overnight, some automated investment he'd forgotten about had matured. He dropped the phone onto the cushion as if it had burned him. Layla emerged from the kitchen, holding 2 mugs of tea, and handed one to him. You look like you've seen a ghost. Karim took the mug, his hand trembling slightly. My money keeps growing even when I'm asleep. She sat beside him, the cat shifting to lay across both their laps. Maybe stop checking it, she suggested flatly. Karim opened his mouth to argue, then closed it and nodded. He placed the phone face down on the coffee table. He took a sip of tea, scalded his tongue, and made a comical sputtering sound that made Layla burst out laughing. The cat, startled, dug its claws into his thigh, and he yelped like a small child. An hour later, they walked to a local farmer's market. Karim decided he would buy the most overpriced, useless item he could find, and he spotted a hand-carved wooden spoon priced at $80. He grabbed the spoon with glee, slapped down $80, and the elderly farmer beamed. Son, that spoon comes with a lifetime guarantee and a free cooking class series worth $500. Karim's face fell as the farmer handed him a certificate for the classes. You can start today at noon, the farmer grinned, completely oblivious to Karim's horror. Layla covered her mouth to suppress laughter. At noon, Karim sat in a small community kitchen, surrounded by cheerful elderly women who treated him like a lost grandson. He chopped onions so badly they flew off the cutting board and hit the instructor in the forehead. The instructor, a stout grandmother with a wooden spoon of her own, pointed it at him. Young man, you need more practice. She signed him up for a month of free lessons, and a local influencer filmed the clumsy rich guy for a viral video. The video earned him a sponsorship offer from a kitchenware brand. His phone buzzed, sponsorship income plus $15,000. Karim stared at the screen, onion tears still streaming down his face, and let out a strangled laugh. He fled the market and walked into a charity thrift store. He bought a hideous neon green sweater, a pair of clown-sized shoes, and a hat with a propeller on top, wore all three, and walked out, hoping to look so ridiculous that no one would take him seriously. A fashion blogger walking past gasped and snapped photos. Within an hour, his ironic avant-garde look trended online, and a boutique offered him $10,000 to model for their new streetwear collection. Karim tore off the propeller hat, threw it on the ground, and stomped on it. The hat's propeller spun defiantly in the air, landing perfectly back on his head. He groaned, his face reddening. Layla found him on a curb, sitting cross-legged, the neon sweater bunched around him, the propeller hat still spinning lazily on his head. "You look like a rejected children's TV host," she said, sitting beside him. He turned to her, eyes wide with comical despair. "I just want to lose money one time, is that too much to ask?" Layla patted his knee. "The universe has a weird sense of humor." He leaned back, staring at the sky. A bird flew overhead and deposited a small white, dropping directly onto his neon green shoulder. He stared at it, then started laughing uncontrollably, a hysterical, breathless cackle. A documentary filmmaker happened to be filming the street nearby and captured the laughing man in the ridiculous outfit with bird droppings on his shoulder. The footage ended up in a film about urban absurdity that won a festival award. The award came with a $5,000 cash prize, which was sent directly to Karim's account. He checked his phone, saw the notification, and screamed into a paper bag he happened to be carrying. Layla took the bag from him, crumpled it, and threw it away. "You need to stop reacting to your phone. It's a device, not a demon." Karim nodded frantically, then pulled out his phone and threw it into a nearby fountain. The phone sank to the bottom. Karim smiled in relief, then a maintenance worker fished it out, dried it off, and returned it to him with a cheerful, "Your phone, you dropped it." Karim stared at him, speechless. He took the dripping phone, shoved it in his pocket, and walked back to Layla's apartment in defeat. The gray cat greeted him at the door, meowing loudly as if demanding an explanation for his absence. Karim flopped onto the couch, the cat hopping onto his chest, and Layla handed him a fresh cup of tea, this time lukewarm. He took a sip, didn't burn himself, and felt a small victory. "Maybe," he said slowly, "I should stop trying to lose money. Maybe I should just live." Layla raised an eyebrow. "Revolutionary idea." He rolled his eyes at her sarcasm but smiled. He spent the next few hours helping Layla around her apartment, fixing a wobbly table leg, hanging a crooked painting, watering the dying plant on the windowsill. The plant perked up visibly. The gray cat followed him everywhere, rubbing against his ankles, demanding attention. He scooped it up and carried it around like a baby, talking to it in a silly, high-pitched voice that made Layla snort. She pulled out her old, battered camera and snapped a photo of him holding the cat, his face relaxed and goofy, the plant in the background looking slightly less dead. "That's a keeper," she whispered. He put the cat down, walked to the window, and looked out at the city. The afternoon sun bathed everything in gold, and for once he didn't think about numbers or missions or failure. He realized he hadn't checked his bank balance for 3 hours. It was a new record. He felt a lightness in his chest that had nothing to do with his wealth. Layla's phone rang. It was the community center director. The trampoline had attracted a local news crew, and they wanted to do a feature on the mysterious benefactor. Karim paled. "Don't tell them it was me," he said frantically, waving his hands. Layla grinned into the phone. "He says he wants to remain anonymous." The director agreed but insisted on naming the new art wing after him. Karim dropped his head into his hands. "I'm going to have a wing named after me. I'm going to be immortalized in community center history." Layla patted his back. "You poor, poor rich man." He lifted his head, a wry grin on his face. "At least it's not a statue. Can you imagine? A bronze me standing in the middle of the park with my hair all messed up and a cat at my feet." Layla tilted her head. "Honestly, that would be kind of adorable." Karim laughed genuinely, his shoulders shaking. The cat still on his chest meowed in agreement. He stood up, stretched, and declared, "I'm going to go buy groceries, normal groceries for normal people." He grabbed the crocheted shopping bag Layla offered him, his feet still in the oversized clown shoes. He walked to the neighborhood market, bought bread, milk, eggs, and a bag of apples. He paid with exact change, no tips, no grand gestures. The cashier smiled, and he smiled back like a normal person. He walked home, the grocery bag swinging, the clown shoes making an absurd thumping sound on the pavement. A group of children pointed and laughed, and he laughed back, waving at them. He entered Layla's apartment, set the groceries on the counter, and turned to find her holding a new phone in her hand. "Bought you a cheap one. No notifications, no banking apps, just calls and texts." Karim took the phone, turned it over in his hands, and felt a genuine, warm smile spread across his face. Not a smirk, not a grimace, not a desperate grin, just a smile. He nodded once softly, and she nodded back. Karim sat on the couch, turning the simple phone over and over in his hands, a quiet smile on his face. He didn't feel the urge to check a balance or complete a mission. He felt ordinary. He looked at Layla, who was now chopping vegetables in the tiny kitchen. "What do normal people do on a Saturday?" he asked, genuinely curious. She paused, knife in midair, and shrugged. "Whatever they want." He decided to try something radical. He walked to the park, found a chess table and sat down. Not to lose, not to win, just to play. An elderly man sat across from him and they played a slow, quiet game. Karim lost fairly, no theatrics, no hidden agenda. He simply made a bad move and the old man checkmated him. Karim smiled, extended his hand and said, "Good game." The old man grinned back. He walked home feeling light. The gray cat met him at the door, meowing for dinner. He fed it, watched it eat and realized he was genuinely happy. No phone buzzes, no missions, no numbers. The next morning he woke up and decided to apply for a job, a real, normal job. He walked into a small bookstore and asked the owner if they needed help. The owner squinted at his torn clothes and nodded hesitantly. He spent the day shelving books, alphabetizing with painstaking care. A customer asked for a recommendation and Karim, thinking fast, picked a random novel and handed it over. The customer bought it and loved it. The customer turned out to be a famous literary critic who wrote a glowing review of the bookstore's expert curation. The bookstore's sales tripled overnight, and the owner gave Karim a raise and a bonus, which of course added to his wealth. Karim collapsed onto the couch that evening, his face buried in a pillow, groaning. Layla, eating an apple beside him, said, "You're literally too good at being bad." He grunted in response, his voice muffled. He quit the bookstore the next day, fearing he'd accidentally turn it into a global chain. The owner begged him to stay, offering him a partnership. Karim literally ran out of the store, clutching his head. He decided to try something completely different. He volunteered at an animal shelter. His job was to walk the dogs. He took out 5 hyperactive terriers on leashes, and they immediately bolted in 5 different directions. Karim was dragged through a mud puddle, his clothes caked in brown slime as the dogs yapped joyfully. A passerby filmed the spectacle, and the video of the mud man and his terrier army went viral. The animal shelter received thousands of dollars in donations because of the viral video. The shelter director gave Karim a plaque and a lifetime supply of dog treats. His bank account had grown again. He sat on the shelter's steps, covered in mud, a terrier sitting on his lap licking his face. He looked at Layla, who had shown up to check on him, and said, "I give up. I officially give up." Layla sat beside him, mud on his shoulder, and said, "Good, now maybe you can just enjoy being alive." He leaned his head on her shoulder and the terrier nuzzled into his neck. He exhaled slowly. They walked to a street fair and Karim spotted a carnival game, a rigged ring toss he was sure to lose. He paid $5, tossed a ring, and it landed perfectly on the bottle. He won a giant stuffed banana. He stared at the banana, then at the carny, who smiled apologetically. "You're the first one to win all day. Here's the grand prize." Karim clutched the banana and walked away, shaking his head in disbelief. He tried another game, popped the balloon with a dart. He missed the entire board, but the dart ricocheted off a pole and popped a balloon anyway. He won a goldfish in a plastic bag. He stood holding a giant stuffed banana and a goldfish in a bag, his face a perfect picture of bewildered comedy. A child walked up and asked, "Mister, can I have the banana?" Karim handed it over instantly. The child's mother, a magazine editor, witnessed the generosity and wrote a piece about random acts of kindness in a cynical world. The article boosted his public image, and an influencer paid him to be kind on camera. Karim threw his hands up. "I can't even give away a banana without making money." Layla took the goldfish from him, named it Mr. Midas, and carried it home in the bag. Back at her apartment, he sat on the floor, staring at the goldfish swimming in a hastily bought bowl. "Mr. Midas," he whispered, "you're the only living thing whose value doesn't increase around me." The fish swam in a circle. He decided to cook dinner, a simple pasta dish. He boiled water, added pasta, and somehow created a sauce so delicious that Layla declared it the best she'd ever had. He had discovered a secret talent. Layla convinced him to write down the recipe. He posted it on a simple food blog she set up for him. Within a week, the recipe was shared 10,000 times, and a publisher offered him a cookbook deal. He sat at the small kitchen table, his head in his hands, laughing helplessly. Layla patted his shoulder. "You're cursed, beautifully, hilariously cursed." The next day, he walked to the community center to check on the art program. The children surrounded him, their faces bright, their paintings now displayed proudly on the walls. His throat tightened with emotion. He helped the children paint for hours, getting paint on his nose, his ears, his hair. He looked like a walking rainbow, but his smile was real and constant. The program director asked him to be a regular volunteer. He agreed, feeling no pressure to win or lose, just to show up and be present. He felt his chest unclench for the first time in years. He walked home under a starry sky, the crayon drawing tucked in his pocket beside the wilted daisy. 2 small, valueless treasures that meant more than any number on a screen. He lay on the couch that night, the cat on his chest, Mr. Midas swimming softly in the bowl. Layla read a book beside him. The silence wasn't awkward, it was warm, safe, shared. He said, "I think I finally understand what I was supposed to lose." She looked up from her book. "What's that?" He placed his hand over his heart. The weight, not the money, just the weight. The basic phone, which he'd barely touched, suddenly rang. He picked it up, heart sinking, but it was only a wrong number, an elderly woman asking for a flower shop. He calmly gave her directions. He hung up, looked at the phone, and placed it face down on the coffee table. No anxiety, no dread, just a phone. He felt a strange, peaceful victory. Layla stretched, yawned, and said, "Tomorrow let's go feed the ducks. No schemes, no money, just bread and ducks." He nodded, a serene smile on his face. Just bread and ducks. That night he dreamed of swimming in a river of gold coins, but instead of drowning he floated effortlessly, the coins parting around him like water. He woke up feeling rested, not burdened. He made breakfast simple toast and eggs and shared it with Layla and the cat. He realized he hadn't thought about his bank account in 2 full days. He felt like he'd won a different kind of lottery. He looked at Mr. Midas swimming in his bowl and smiled. You know what? Being rich isn't so bad when you stop caring about it. The fish swam to the glass and stared back at him. Karim stepped out onto the small balcony, the morning sun warming his face. He breathed in deeply, the city waking up around him, and for the first time in his entire life he felt completely, utterly free, with a full wallet and an empty heart finally filled with everything that mattered. Karim stepped back inside from the balcony, the morning sun still warm on his face. Layla looked up from her coffee and asked, "What's the plan for today?" He shrugged, a lazy smile on his lips. Absolutely nothing. He sat down on the couch and his basic phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. He frowned, opened it, and read the words, "Congratulations, you've been selected for an attendance reward. Just for waking up, $100 has been deposited into your account." Karim stared at the screen, his mouth slowly falling open. He looked at Layla, then back at the phone, then let out a loud, genuine, wheezing laugh that echoed through the small apartment. Layla walked over, read the text over his shoulder, and snorted into her coffee mug. Karim threw his hands up, still laughing. At least the universe is consistent, he managed between breaths. The gray cat, startled by the noise, leaped off the couch and knocked over a stack of books. Karim caught them mid-fall, one by one, without even looking, a clumsy miracle that made Layla choke on her coffee. They decided to walk to the farmer's market, the cat trotting behind them like a tiny furry guardian. The morning air was crisp, and the stalls were bursting with colorful produce and cheerful vendors. Karim approached a stall run by a wizened old woman with twinkling eyes. He picked up a single, overpriced heirloom tomato, placed it on the scale, and paid her exact change with a warm smile. The old woman squinted at him, then at the tomato, and said, "You have kind eyes, young man." She shoved an entire bag of fresh vegetables into his arms and refused to take another coin. Karim stood there holding the heavy bag of free groceries, his face a mixture of gratitude and comedic disbelief. Layla patted his shoulder and whispered, "The curse is now in vegetable form." He walked away, the free bag swinging, and a nearby food blogger snapped a photo of the smiling man with free vegetables. The photo went viral as an image of pure contentment, and a wellness brand offered him $5,000 to use it in a campaign. Karim groaned, but this time he didn't scream or throw his phone. He just rolled his eyes and pocketed the notification, shaking his head with a wry smile. They passed a charity fun run happening in the park. Runners in colorful shirts streamed past, laughing and sweating. Karim stopped to cheer for them, clapping his hands enthusiastically. A runner stumbled, tripped over a loose shoelace, and was about to faceplant onto the pavement. Karim instinctively lunged forward and caught the runner by the elbows, steadying them with surprising grace. The runner, a young woman with a smartphone strapped to her arm, looked up in shock, then recognized the man from the viral vegetable photo. She gasped and whispered, "It's the content guy." She posted the heroic catch video online immediately. Within an hour, Karim's basic phone buzzed with a notification. $2,000 in cryptocurrency tips from anonymous viewers sent directly to a wallet he didn't even know he had. He looked at the phone, sighed deeply, and turned to Layla. "I literally caught a stranger and made money," she shrugged. "You have a talent for kindness and for accidental profit." They walked to the local library, a quiet, dusty building with high ceilings and the smell of old paper. Karim browsed the shelves, his fingers trailing over worn spines, feeling a peaceful calm. He pulled out a tattered poetry book from 1923 and opened it to a random page. A yellowed bookmark fell out, and behind it, a rare misprint in the text that was worth thousands to collectors. He showed the misprint to the librarian, a bespectacled young man who gasped and said, "This book was decommissioned from our collection last year. It's legally yours now." Karim's face froze. He walked out of the library holding the valuable book like it was a ticking bomb. Layla looked at it, then at him, and said, "Frame it or sell it. You can't destroy it, it's literature." He sold the book to a collector for $10,000 and immediately donated every cent to a local school. The school, in gratitude, built a Karim Al-Fayed reading corner with a shiny brass plaque and his name in bold letters. A tax accountant saw the donation on a public registry, calculated his rebate, and sent him a check for $1,500, a refund for being generous. Karim held the check up to the light, his face a perfect mask of exasperated amusement. He decided to spend the day at a small, rundown diner on the edge of town. He ordered the cheapest item, a grilled cheese sandwich, and ate it slowly, savoring the simplicity. The diner owner, a heavy-set man with tired eyes, watched him eat with a sad expression. "You're the first customer all day," he admitted. Karim looked around at the empty booths and felt a pang of empathy. He didn't offer money. Instead, he spent the afternoon helping the owner clean tables and polish the counter. His genuine smile and cheerful chatter lifted the owner's spirits, and he decided to keep the diner open another week. A food vlogger passing by noticed the happy helper through the window and filmed a short clip. The video of the world's most cheerful diner patron went viral, and customers flooded the diner the next day. The grateful owner offered Karim a 10% royalty on all future profits. Karim tried to refuse, but the owner shoved a signed agreement into his hands and locked the door behind him. Karim walked home with the agreement in his pocket, his face a mixture of disbelief and reluctant laughter. Layla nudged him. You literally can't stop making money. It's a superpower at this point. That evening, he pulled out the royalty check he had received, $200, and held it over the kitchen sink. He lit it with a match, determined to destroy it once and for all. The fire caught the edge of the check, but his hand trembled, and the burning paper fluttered out of his grasp and landed on a metal tray where it fizzled out harmlessly. The check was only half burned, and now a limited edition art piece by a collector who offered him $1,000 for it. Karim stared at the charred check, then at Layla, then at the gray cat, which meowed as if in judgment. He dropped his head onto the kitchen counter with a soft thud. Layla ran her hand over his back comfortingly. You managed to turn a failed act of arson into a profit. That's genuinely impressive. His muffled groan was his only response. He lifted his head, his face marked with a red crease from the counter edge, and said, I'm going to take a shower. A long, normal shower. No money, no missions, no weirdness. He stepped into the small bathroom, turned on the water, and immediately the shower head exploded, sending water spraying everywhere. He stood there, drenched, blinking in shock. A plumber arrived within the hour, fixed it for free because he was friends with Layla, and gave Karim a coupon for a free future repair. Karim tucked the coupon into his pocket, afraid to throw it away. He emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, his hair dripping, the cat staring at him with apparent satisfaction. Layla handed him a dry shirt and stifled a laugh. He sat on the couch, finally dry, the cat on his lap, the goldfish swimming peacefully, Layla beside him reading. The silence was thick and warm, no buzzes, no alerts, just breathing. He said quietly, I think I've finally lost it. Layla looked up. Lost what? He smiled, his eyes soft, and reached for her hand. The weight of trying to lose anything. She squeezed his hand, and they sat in the golden evening light, the cat purring, the fish circling, the city humming faintly outside. He felt no urge to check anything, balance, mission time. His basic phone lay on the coffee table, screen dark. It buzzed once silently with a final notification. Mission complete, happiness achieved, wealth irrelevant. He didn't look at it. He didn't need to. He closed his eyes and breathed deeply, the moment complete.